Oh yeah, we're looking real nice outside. Probably not going to be a very productive day today. May tinker around in the shop a little bit, but that's about it. Hell, probably got almost another 6 inches of snow from what we had last night. Shaping up to be the first white Christmas we've had in a while. But anyway, since there's not going to be a whole lot going on again today, figured to do another equipment story. I apologize for, I'll tell you what, we're going to go grab a flashlight real quick. It's kind of dark back here in the corner. But I apologize for not getting the video up yesterday. I volunteered to go into work and got home and took a quick break and started answering comments on that video I put up Friday night. And by the time it was all said and done, it was like 7 o'clock, and it's like, well, yeah, I'm not going to make one now. It's going to be even darker. This is a video I intended to do yesterday, and it would have been too damn dark. So, we're going to get it done today. But we're going to talk about the little guy stuff back here in the corner that's seldom seen and seldom talked about. If I can squeeze my way back in here. Not sitting that way. Would have been nice to get duals taken off of this thing, but I doubt that's going to happen now because wrestling duals around in the snow kind of sucks. Okay, now we're back here. So, this tractor. And we'll get some shit back away from it here real quick. So you can kind of see what it is. I think this tractor's moved out of this corner since, well, it's been back here since we built that shelf. Hell, I can't remember how old I was, but I know I wasn't old enough or strong enough to turn a ratchet to run them bolts in. So, it'd been a while ago. But anyway, what we got here, it's a 1955 Oliver Super 77 diesel. And this is the tractor that almost got Dad killed bringing it home. Well, the story goes, there's a little farm out north of town here, and Dad used to drive back and forth to when he was still working at his, at the machine shop he started his internship in, or his apprenticeship, whatever you want to call it. He says he can't remember how many times he drove past that farm, never saw this thing sitting. And he says one day he was, I think he said he was coming home from work one day. It was early fall. Leaves were just starting to drop, and he just happened to be looking in the right place at the right time. He happened to see the nose of this thing peeking out from the trees in the fence line. And he says it was far enough away he couldn't tell what it was, but he knew it was an Oliver by the way the grill was shaped. So he got down the end of the road, swung back around, pulled in the driveway, and somebody came out of the house, and he said, hey, looks like you got an old Oliver sitting back here in the fence row. And they're like, yeah, it says we were raking hay with it one time, and it blew the radiator cap off, and we just parked it after that. And Dad was like, well, would you be interested in selling it? And it's like, yeah, we probably would. And I asked them how much they want to have for it, and said, well, you give us $50, you can have it. So he handed them the cash and came home, and I think at that point he had to borrow a buddy's trailer. And let's walk around the other side of it here real quick. That time he had his old 85 GMC K20. And let's see if I can find a place. That'll work. And the trailer he borrowed, I've never seen hitched like this, but he says apparently back in the day they were rather popular. The ball latch, or the ball on it, or not the ball, but the hitch on the trailer didn't actually have a ball lock on it. He said it basically had an over-exaggerated lip on the front, and basically just pulling on the trailer was what kept it from coming unhitched. And so we went, he and borrowed his buddy's trailer, went and got the tractor, loaded it up, was coming back through town, and came up over the railroad tracks, and the trailer was one of them that had, the deck was only as wide as in between the axles, and it had fenders on it. And the rear wheels on this thing weren't set out, or were set out too far to fit between the fenders on the trailer. And so he had the nose up as far as he can get it. The wheels were, or the rear wheels were bucked up against the fenders, but it was still almost it was still sitting back on the beaver tail. And basically, when he went over the railroad tracks in town, it bounced just right, and the trailer came unhooked from the truck. And he had the safety chains on it, and it bucked up against picked the tongue of the trailer up against the safety chains. And this trailer on the back of the dovetail had a piece of C-channel. And he said when it came unhooked and he was still rolling, and by the time when he got it to a stop, that trailer rolled up and got hooked underneath one of the railroad tracks. They said could not get to say there was pressure on the chains, and there was pressure on the beaver tail, and there was no way he could get it unhooked. He tried. And this was just about the time the train always came through town every day. So he's sitting there with his pickup truck chained to this trailer that he can't get the truck unhooked from the trailer, and he can't get the trailer unhooked from the railroad track, knowing very well that there's a train about to come through here any minute now. And it just so happens about this time, Teddy Payne, who has had farms both north and south of town, he had cattle both north and south of town, was coming through with his loader tractor to feed his cattle out north of town. He pulls up, sees Dad there on the railroad tracks, and I guess he's laughing his ass off, and Dad's cussing at him, telling him help him get this damn trailer unhooked from railroad tracks before a train comes through. So that he gets his loader tractor around back, and they chain it up, and he uses the loader and gets the trailer popped off the track, and they push the trailer and drive the truck forward off the track so they can and then pull off the side there to get the trailer hooked back on. Dad said no more, and they were hooking the trailer back up to the truck, and the train come through town. So it was literally just in the nick of time. So, anyway, that whole ordeal gets over, and he gets home, a little shaken obviously, and he's getting it unloaded off the trailer, and he gets the ramps down and everything, gets up on the tractor, and he's like, well, I can't remember how long he said it'd been since this thing actually ran, but just for shits and giggles, he checked to see if there's fuel in it. Sure enough, there was something that reminded him of fuel. He said it didn't really smell like diesel anymore, but he got up on there and put it up in high reverse when he started backing it off the trailer, and he says he got it rolling and popped the clutch, and he says by the time he hit the concrete out here in front of the house, he said it was sitting there pecking away, just running like it just ran yesterday. And so he's like, well, shit. Went up front and popped the radiator cap off and held his hand up over the filler neck on the radiator. He could feel it huffing. He's like, well, shit. I just bought a $50 tractor, and all it really needs is a head gasket. And he was driving it around here. Hell, he drove it back to Granddad's and showed it to him. And he says it was sitting there in the driveway idling the whole time he's talking to Granddad, just running great. He didn't have time to work on it right away, so he pulled it down in the barn. And actually, at that point, he might not even had the barn built yet. He might have still been parking the tractors out there behind the shed. I'd have to ask him. But he brought it up the next weekend and pulled the head off to see what he was getting into. Drove it up to the garage. And he, good thing that's a mag light. He, got the head off, and he took a flashlight, and he's looking down through the cylinders. He says they all look good until it gets to number 6. It's either 6 or 5, I can't remember which one. But he, got to either 5 or 6, and he looks down there, and he looks down through the cylinder, and he's like, well, hell, I can see the crank. You can see all the way through the oil pan in number 6 or number 5, whichever one it is. Either one of the holes you can see all the way down to the oil pan. As near as he can tell, because there's no piston left. He says there's some chunks laying in the oil pan, but none of them are very big. And there's about half the rod in there. The piston end of the rod is gone, and the rest of it's all knuckled over like 90 degrees, just bouncing around in there. And he said, near as he could figure, their whole breaking hay with it and blowing the radiator cap off story is kind of bullshit. He says what he figures they probably did is they couldn't get to start one day, and they they were trying to fire it with ether, and they loaded the cylinder up, and when it went, it blew the piston out of it. That's really the only thing we can come up with that would cause that kind of major carnage. So, yeah. But he said if you just sat there and listened to it running, you'd never known it. He said it sounded like it was sitting there pecking away on all 6. So, and he didn't have a pot to piss in at that point, really. So, he just threw the head back on and tightened the bolts up hand tight. And it's sat ever since. I keep trying to move this thing up on the priority list because I really want to get it going. Because, I mean, you look at it, and this tractor is, I mean, obviously it really needs a bath because it's, I mean, covered in God knows how many years of dust, and engine's all covered in God knows how many years of grease. But, I mean, you look at it, and other than that spot right there in the hood, right there, and then I don't think I can get to it, but on the other side, on the side panel, on the far side of the motor, the steering shaft goes through here, and there's a universal joint that brings it down alongside the motor, and it wore a little hole in the front and rear side panel right about here on the other side. Other than that, this little guy is straight as an arrow, and I don't even think I could bring myself to paint it. I give it a wax job, kind of buff some of the rust off a little bit. I mean, this old girl's straight. I don't even think I'd try to fix the spots in the tin because, I don't know, I think it gives it a little character. And once you fix it, it's obvious that you fixed it, and it just looks out of place. And they're only original once. That's the part that kills me, is to see guys that are selling tractors they've restored, and they said, all original. Yet it's got like a $4,000 paint job on it. As soon as you slap a stick of paint on it, it is no longer original. But still got the original BF Goodrich tires on the back. Near as we can tell, the fronts are original. And knowing the farm it came off of, there's an outside possibility it was sold new here at the Oliver dealer in town, although since we never got a bill of sale or anything with it, that's kind of hard to prove. But seeing how it's been sitting, and Lord knows how long it's sitting in that fence row, it obviously probably didn't relocate that far. So I'd be willing to bet money it was sold new here in town. Could never prove it, but odds are very good. Like I say, I really want to get this thing moved up on the priority list, but every time I try to, something else comes up. But we're finally starting to get ahead on some of the projects around here, and I'd really, at least this summer, like to get the motor out of it and tore down so we can come up with a list of parts we need. Because I'm going to have the injector pump. I've already got a quote on having it rebuilt, and it hurts. It's got a Bosch PSB pump on it, and I guess parts for them are getting hard to find. But I want the injector system, I'm going to get rebuilt, get the injectors cleaned and calibrated. And that thing needs a bath. I mean, look at it. The universal there has been wearing, there's wore holes in the piles of grease. And looks like the shaft seal on the steering box is definitely leaking because you can see oil there. But anyway, have to get the motor tore down and see what the cranks looks like. I'd be awful leery about knowing what the cylinder, knowing what it did to the piston and the rod. I'd be awful leery about reusing the original crank for it. So I may have to get it out, and I don't know, I haven't decided yet. I may just go ahead and find another crank for it, 'cause I'm gonna have to find a rod and a wrist pin anyway. So, but I mean, all in all, it really shouldn't. Most of the work that needs done to it needs done to it from sitting and the motor trying to blow up. Dad said the hardest thing about it is going to be getting the sleeve out of it, because it says when it went, it blew the front and the back of the sleeve out into the water jacket, so the sleeve's going to have to come out in pieces. That's going to be interesting. You have to find a way to break it somehow, but cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. But anyway, that's just the short story on this one. Like I say, one of these, hopefully here in the near future, you'll see this one finally roll out of this corner and go up to the shop for a little while. This is the one I've always wanted to get going. It's just, like I say, every time I think I got time to work on it, another project shows up. But that's got to quit happening, because this one's got to get going. I've always wanted a Fleetline or a Super Diesel, and we've got one right here. It just needs a motor rebuild in it. And the plan is, although I guess it's not really a plan, it's more of a thought, was to take the wide front off that Super 88 over there and put on it. But I don't know, I kind of want to leave it a narrow front, because I kind of want to, if I ever go to planting 15-inch beans, I'd probably dual this one up and use this one to pull the bean planter, depending on what kind of planter I get. But anyway, that's the short story on the Super 77, the seldom seen, never talked about. So now you know. Anyway, I guess that does it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.